To preface, I absolutely love the Devil May Cry series. My all-time favorite Devil May Cry game is the rebooted DMC Devil May Cry, I believe released in 2012, back on the PS3, then remastered for PS4. Played both versions, loved it. Now, I did have a little bit of a gripe with that one in the sense of just the frame rate. Hiccuped a lot. But otherwise, I thought that game was the definitive game for many generations on how to make a game excel. And the fact that it came and released close by to The Last of Us, and I still can say that, magnificent. Now, as I stated, I do love Devil May Cry as a whole. I have all Devil May Cry games since the PS3 version, the PS3, the remastered, and then I also have the original Devil May Cry trilogy on PS3 and PS4, and I played through it fully on PS4. Didn't really care for the graphics because they're old-ass games, but I love the story of Devil May Cry. Now, granted, the first two, I believe, at the very least, the first Devil May Cry game's gameplay is very, very aged, and I didn't really care for that gameplay, but I managed and I dealt with it because I always loved the stories in Devil May Cry. Now, fast forward, in the 2020s, we get Devil May Cry 5. I guess that released in 2019 on the PS4 Pro, which I own that as well. Played it day one, and I loved it. Now, I got it in 2020 remastered, the special edition for PS5, and I just now got to play it because I just got a PS5 in the last month and a half. Now, back in 2019, I loved Devil May Cry 5. I didn't really have any issues with it. Now, in today's standards, I have a couple gripes with it, but overall, I still love Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition. The story alone is top-notch. If you're invested in the Devil May Cry series and story at all, you'll basically know where this one goes as well. They do add some different, unique storytelling orthodoxies into it, but essentially it all ends up leading to the exact same place that most other Devil May Cry games end at. Now, I still love Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition on PS5. I think there are times when it excels brilliance, honestly. The visuals look outstanding. Honestly, this game, for the most part, could have just been a straight PS5 game. Like the very first boss mission fight, where he's just going around, going berserk, throwing you, crashing into buildings blowing up, being broken down. That is magnificent visuals to a T. And that's what I love to see. I love to see, metaphorically and physically, things breaking down, walls breaking down and blowing up, showing the visual prowess. Unfortunately, that one boss fight is really the only time that kind of stuff happens. Things crack down in fights, yes, but not nearly as giant or in an epic way as the first boss fight. But I mean, at least we got that one boss fight where things were tumbling down and everything, and that's fine. The visuals and audio work very well, and that one scene showcases that. Now, along the way through the whole entire game, you get the fighting combo style gameplay, same as every other Devil May Cry game, and it works. I don't really care for combo fighting games, but in the sense of Devil May Cry, I always make an exception because they always tell exceptional tales and stories within the games. And I managed. You can watch my whole entire walkthrough and playthrough on my YouTube. I'm not really the greatest fighting gamer or combo gamer out there, but I went through it for the story, and that really tells as well. I mean, I have no complaints with the gameplay, other than it's smooth and it plays very well, yes, but at this point it kind of feels dated in the gameplay, just because that, alongside the cutscenes, alongside the constant stops of customization and loading screens, which there aren't too many loading screens. You really just get a loading screen at the beginning of each mission, and then throughout each mission you get customization scenes and screens, and I don't really care for that. I think that when you start a mission, you should be able to customize right then and there, and then let the story play out, and then play the game. That's how I believe it should be. Now, Devil May Cry 5 features the same pre-existing characters: Dante, Nero, Trish, Lady. They even mention Mundus, Satan, Virgil. And then we get new characters such as Demon King Urizen and V, the mysterious one, alongside all of the bosses that you eventually have to fight through the 20-mission story. And I did appreciate all of the writing and storytelling within the new main characters. What I didn't like as far as the writing for the story and for the characters was the fact that all of the boss fights, except Demon King Urizen's, all of the bosses had like no depth to them. They had a little bit to none. Now, that can play out fine for, I don't know, a game where it's not really story or very character-based in the sense of a story, like Street Fighter. I don't know. I don't really play those very often, but I'm just making a loose example. But in Devil May Cry, where the story is focused on mainly characters, take, for example, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, where every single boss battle, beginning and end, you learn fucking everything about the boss. Not the main character boss, I mean the bosses you play as and you fight. They are incredible in that game. You learn everything about every single character in Metal Gear Solid 4, including the big bads that you don't really care about. You still know about who they are. In Devil May Cry 5, you kind of just wander into a room and the big boss shows up and Dante or Nero say a quippy one-liner, and then you just kind of get into it and fight them. And then at the end, it just kind of shows their death scene. And for the most part, that's really all there is for the boss fights, other than the gameplay itself. And that's one part of the character writing I didn't really care for. This is a 7 to 8 hour story that could have been fleshed out at least to 10 hours. Just give us some depth in the secondary bosses. You know, prime example, DMC, Devil May Cry. They did most of their bosses justice. You know, one of the bosses, I don't remember her name, but she was with Mundus, and you got to see some pretty exotic and erotic scenes with her and Mundus, which is fine because it's called character development. And then you also got scenes to explore who they are as people and characters. Devil May Cry 5, not so much. They use the majority of the time really upping up who Demon King Urizen is, only for them to think that they're twisting the world around on you. But like I said, if you're a Devil May Cry enthusiast, you know where this game's story is going. And they still had a couple twists by the end of the game, and the entire story as a whole is perfectly fine. It's a really good story, but it's not perfect. The writing should have done more justice for the story. Like I said, the characters, the visuals, the models, they all look amazing. The audio sounds great. The storytelling and direction is perfectly fine. I don't have an issue with anything majorly other than they could have added in more writing and depth for the story from the characters that they kind of just forgot about, like the big bosses. And also they sidelined Trish, Lady, and for the most part Nico. Nico being a new character where we don't really know shit about her by the end. She has a couple quippy one-liners as well, but her depth isn't really to the point of Dante or Nero or even V or Virgil. She's just kind of there as the secondary or tertiary character depending on the scene. Same with Trish and Lady. They're main proponents for big boss fights every now and again, but they don't really flesh their characters out really at all. They're just kind of there for the story, and then they awaken, and then they get filled in on what's going on. And then Dante, Nero, or V just kind of scurry off and do their own thing for the story, and that's fine. But it doesn't feel like a lived-in, fully realized world because some characters feel stock, especially if this is a newcomer coming in Devil May Cry 5, which I don't understand why you would do that. I guess for like new-gen consoles, I guess. But even then, like, it's called Devil May Cry 5. You got at least 5 games to catch up on. Although, what I did love about the writing was that, for newcomers especially, they have a section in the game called History of DMC. It's about 5 to 6 minutes. You really get to expand on what is Devil May Cry before you jump into Devil May Cry 5 story. I did really appreciate that. While it didn't really show cutscenes or anything, it showed you the main proponents of the main storyline in the sense of sentences and statements just kind of floating in a red air. And I did enjoy that, and then I got into the game. Just because it's been a couple years since I even played this one on PS4 Pro. But nevertheless, overall for me, Devil May Cry 5 is a really good game. It is a really good game, and I would recommend everybody to play it. It's just not really perfect in the sense of writing or even story, honestly. The story is really good, but it's held down by the lackluster, dense writing. Like I said, they didn't really do their main characters justice. Or I should say the pre-existing characters justice. They did Dante, Nero, and V justice, as well as Virgil. But I feel they messed up and completely missed out on Trish, Lady, and especially Nico. Nico, you get a sense of her character and personality, but it's not really in your face out there. It's just kind of here and there when you need to customize from her van. But overall for me, Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition on PS5 holds up very strong. It's an 8 out of 10, which is really good in my eyes. Thank you. If you like this video, please feel free to join my membership plan on here. It will greatly help me in the future. Thank you.